I stood at my bedroom window, watching my parents drive away on graduation morning. They claimed exhaustion from work, but 3 hours later, Instagram notifications flooded my phone. Photos of my parents laughing at my sister Madison's luxury spa day, complete with champagne toasts and professional photo shoots. The same energy they claimed they didn't have for my valedictorian ceremony. My cap and gown hung untouched on the door as I stared at their beaming faces celebrating everything except my 4 years of academic excellence. My name is Ashford, and I'm 22 years old. This morning should have been the culmination of everything I've worked toward for 4 years at State University. Instead, I'm sitting alone in my childhood bedroom, staring at graduation regalia that feels more like a costume for a play nobody wants to attend. The conversation with my parents happened over breakfast 3 days ago. Dad pushed scrambled eggs around his plate, while Mom scrolled through her phone, both avoiding eye contact as they delivered their verdict. "Son, we're just completely drained from work," Dad said, his construction-weathered hands fidgeting with his coffee mug. "Between my job sites running overtime and your mother's double shifts at the hospital, we barely have energy to function." Mom nodded without looking up. "The live stream option sounds perfect, though. We can watch from home and really focus on your speech without all the crowd noise and ceremony chaos." I should have known something was wrong when they seemed so prepared with their excuse. These are the same people who drove 8 hours round trip every weekend during Madison's senior year of high school to watch her cheerleading competitions. The same parents who took vacation days for her community college orientation, her part-time job interviews, and even her first Instagram collaboration with a local boutique. Madison is my younger sister by 2 years. While I threw myself into academics after a knee injury, ended my football career junior year of high school, she discovered her calling in social media influence. Her Instagram account documents her life as a 20-year-old community college student who models clothes for local businesses and promotes wellness products to her growing follower count. The favoritism started small. Missing my Honor Society induction because Madison had a birthday dinner with friends. Skipping my scholarship awards banquet because they wanted to help her move into her apartment. Choosing her college orientation over my academic conference presentation, where I won second place for undergraduate research. Each time they had reasonable explanations. Madison needed emotional support. The timing was unfortunate. They promised to make it up to me later. But later never came. Instead, I learned to celebrate alone. When I made Dean's List every semester, I treated myself to dinner at the campus dining hall. When professors recommended me for research opportunities, I called Grandma Dorothy instead of my parents. When I got accepted to present at the National Engineering Conference, I shared the news with my girlfriend Taylor first. My phone buzzed with another Instagram notification. This time, it was a video of Mom clinking champagne flutes with Madison and 3 of her friends at what looked like the most expensive spa in the county. Mom was laughing harder than I'd seen in months, her face glowing with the kind of joy she used to show at my football games before the injury changed everything. I screenshot the video and checked the timestamp. Posted 47 minutes ago. The same morning they claimed they were too exhausted to attend my graduation ceremony. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd spent the last 4 years working 3 part-time jobs to pay for expenses they claimed they couldn't afford. Tutoring freshman math students at $15 an hour. Stocking inventory at the campus bookstore during breaks between classes. Delivering food for a local restaurant until 2 in the morning on weekends. My grade point average never dropped below 4.0. Not when I was sleeping 4 hours a night. Not when I chose studying over social events. Not when other students were partying while I wrote research papers in the library until closing time. The knee injury that ended my athletic scholarship could have derailed everything. Instead, it became my motivation to prove that my worth extended beyond what my body could do on a football field. I switched my focus entirely to academics, discovering a passion for engineering that surprised everyone, including myself. Professor Martinez became my mentor during sophomore year, when he noticed my dedication during his advanced calculus course. He stayed after class to work through complex problems with me, recommended additional reading materials, and eventually invited me to assist with his research on sustainable building materials. Ashford. He told me during one of our evening lab sessions, intelligence combined with work ethic is unstoppable. Don't let anyone convince you that your achievements are anything less than extraordinary. His validation meant more than any praise from my parents ever had, probably because it was earned through demonstrated competence rather than family obligation. My phone rang, interrupting my spiral into past disappointments. Taylor's name appeared on the screen. "Are you getting ready?" she asked when I answered. "I'm leaving my apartment in 30 minutes to meet you at the venue." "Yeah, almost ready." I lied, still sitting in pajama pants while staring at my cap and gown. "Ashford, what's wrong? You sound weird." I hesitated. Taylor knew about my family dynamics, but I'd always downplayed the extent of their favoritism toward Madison. She came from a close family where graduation day would involve grandparents flying in from across the country and cousins taking vacation days to attend. "My parents aren't coming," I said finally. "They're too tired from work." The silence stretched long enough that I checked to make sure the call hadn't dropped. "Too tired." Taylor's voice carried a sharp edge I rarely heard. "Ashford, you're graduating summa cum laude as valedictorian. You've been accepted to the most competitive graduate fellowship in the state. You're speaking at your graduation. How are they too tired for that?" I know it sounds bad, but Dad's been working overtime on this big construction project, and Mom picked up extra shifts because 2 nurses quit last month. That's not what I'm seeing on social media right now. My stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" "I mean, my friend Jessica is at Serenity Springs Resort today for her bachelorette party, and she just posted a Snapchat story from the spa. Your parents are there, Ashford, with Madison and her friends. They look anything but tired." The phone nearly slipped from my hand. Serenity Springs Resort was the most expensive spa destination within 200 miles. A single-day package cost more than I made in a month tutoring students. "Are you sure it's them?" "I'm looking at your dad right now. He's wearing that blue polo shirt with the construction company logo standing next to your mom, and Madison at some kind of champagne toast. They hired a professional photographer, Ashford. This isn't just a casual spa day." The reality hit me like ice water. They hadn't just chosen Madison over me again. They'd lied about their financial situation, their energy level, and their availability. They'd planned an elaborate celebration for Madison's social media content, while dismissing the biggest academic achievement of my life. I thanked Taylor and hung up, then opened my laptop to do some research. Serenity Springs Resort's website showed their premium packages starting at $3,000 for a group of 5. The professional photography add-on cost another $800. These were the same parents who claimed financial hardship when I needed help with textbooks. The same parents who suggested I take out additional student loans instead of asking them for assistance with living expenses. My phone buzzed with a text from my roommate Jake. "Dude, Madison's Instagram story is insane. Your parents look like they're having the time of their lives at that fancy spa place. Didn't they say they couldn't come to graduation because they were too tired?" I didn't respond. Instead, I sat on my bed staring at the cap and gown that represented 4 years of sacrifice, determination, and academic excellence that my own parents couldn't be bothered to witness. But as I looked at my reflection in the mirror, something shifted inside me. Maybe their absence said more about them than it said about me. Maybe the people who truly mattered would be there today, and that would have to be enough. I stood up and reached for my graduation outfit. Today was about celebrating what I'd accomplished, not mourning what my parents failed to recognize. An hour later, I was dressed in my cap and gown, standing in Jake's dorm room, as he scrolled through Madison's social media accounts on his laptop. What we discovered made my stomach turn with a mixture of anger and disbelief. "Look at this," Jake said, pointing to Madison's Instagram story. She posted this an hour ago with the caption, "Family Spa Day with the best parents ever." There's your mom getting a massage that costs $200 an hour according to their website. I leaned closer to see the screen. Mom looked completely relaxed, her face covered with some kind of green facial mask, while a spa technician worked on her shoulders. She was smiling bigger than I'd seen since... I couldn't actually remember the last time I'd seen her that happy. And this one. Jake continued, clicking to the next story slide. Your dad is in their mineral pools with Madison and her friends. The timestamp shows this was posted 20 minutes before your ceremony starts. Dad was lounging in steaming water arms, stretched along the pool's edge, looking like he didn't have a care in the world. The exhaustion he'd claimed was preventing him from attending my graduation seemed to have miraculously disappeared. Wait, there's more. Jake said, his voice getting angrier as he scrolled. Madison tagged the location and mentioned this is a celebration weekend for reaching 10,000 followers. Your parents are paying for a 3-day luxury retreat for their daughter's social media milestone. I sat down hard in Jake's desk chair. 10,000 Instagram followers. That was their priority over my graduation as valedictorian. My phone buzzed with a text from my roommate Marcus, who was already at the graduation venue. Ashford, where are you? Professor Martinez is looking for you. He wants to go over some last-minute details about your speech. I realized I needed to stop dwelling on my parents' betrayal and focus on the people who actually cared about my achievements. But first, I had to understand the full extent of what they'd done. Jake, can you help me figure out how much this spa weekend actually costs? I want to know exactly how much money they claimed they didn't have for my education, but somehow found for Madison's social media celebration. Jake pulled up the Serenity Springs website and started calculating. Premium weekend package for 5 people, 3 days, and 2 nights, includes all meals and spa treatments. That's $15,000 minimum. The professional photographer package adds another $2,000. If they're staying in the luxury suites, Madison showed in her stories, add another $5,000. $22,000. More than I'd borrowed in student loans for my entire final year of college. That's not even the worst part. I said, remembering something that had been bothering me. They told me they couldn't afford to take time off work for my graduation, but Dad owns his construction company. He doesn't lose money when he takes vacation days. He just chooses not to schedule jobs. Jake's expression grew more serious as he processed what I was saying. And your mom is a registered nurse, right? She gets paid vacation time. She could have requested graduation day off months in advance. The lies were unraveling, revealing something much worse than simple favoritism. This was deliberate deception, designed to avoid taking responsibility for their choices. I pulled out my phone and scrolled back through months of family text messages, looking for evidence of the pattern I was starting to recognize. The evidence was overwhelming. In March, when I'd won the engineering department's Outstanding Student Award, I'd texted them excitedly about the recognition. Mom's response was, "That's nice, honey, proud of you," followed immediately by a 3-paragraph message about Madison's collaboration with a local jewelry store. In January, when Professor Martinez recommended me for the graduate fellowship that would cover my entire master's degree, plus a living stipend, Dad's reaction was, "Good for you, son," while posting a Facebook album of Madison's photo shoot for a fitness supplement company. In November, when I'd presented my undergraduate research at the state conference and won 2nd place competing against graduate students, neither parent acknowledged it. But they drove 4 hours to attend Madison's birthday dinner at a restaurant she'd promoted on Instagram. The pattern was clear and consistent. My achievements were minimized, dismissed, or ignored entirely, while Madison's smallest social media milestones were treated like major life events. Ashford. Jake said quietly, "There's something else you should know. I didn't want to tell you this before graduation, but my girlfriend works at the bank where your parents do their business. She mentioned seeing them apply for a loan last month." My heart sank. What kind of loan? $25,000. They told the loan officer it was for home renovations, but now that I'm seeing these spa photos... The betrayal cut deeper than anything I'd experienced. Not only had my parents lied about their availability and energy levels, but they'd borrowed money to fund Madison's lifestyle, while claiming poverty when I needed help with educational expenses. I thought about all the times I'd eaten ramen noodles for dinner, because I couldn't afford groceries after paying for textbooks. All the social events I'd missed because I was working extra shifts to cover my living expenses. All the networking opportunities I'd passed up because I couldn't afford professional clothing or conference travel. Meanwhile, my parents were secretly planning luxury vacations for Madison and borrowing money to maintain her social media image. "We need to get you to graduation," Jake said, closing the laptop. "You can't let their dysfunction ruin your day." He was right, but as we walked across campus toward the ceremony venue, I felt something changing inside me. The hurt and disappointment were transforming into something sharper and more focused. I'd spent 4 years trying to earn their approval through academic excellence. I'd assumed that if I just achieved enough, worked hard enough, succeeded visibly enough, they would eventually recognize my worth. But the spa photos proved that wasn't true. They were capable of pride, joy, and celebration. They simply chose not to direct those emotions toward my accomplishments. As we approached the venue, I saw other families arriving for graduation. Parents carrying flowers for their graduates. Grandparents walking slowly but determinedly toward the entrance. Siblings holding congratulatory signs. The contrast with my situation was stark, but it also highlighted something important. I wasn't the only student here without perfect family support. Some of my classmates were first-generation college students, whose parents couldn't attend because of work obligations or immigration status. Others came from families where higher education wasn't valued or understood. But I knew the difference between genuine inability and deliberate choice. My parents had the resources, time, and ability to attend my graduation. They simply chose not to prioritize it. My phone buzzed with a text from Professor Martinez. "Ashford, I need to speak with you before the ceremony. Meet me near the faculty entrance in 10 minutes. Important news about your fellowship." I quickened my pace, grateful for the distraction from my family drama. Professor Martinez had been more of a mentor and supporter than my parents had ever been. His opinion of my work mattered more than any parental approval ever could. As Jake and I navigated through the crowd of excited families, I made a decision. Today wasn't about my parents' failures. It was about celebrating what I'd accomplished despite their indifference. But I also decided that their absence wouldn't go unacknowledged. If they wanted to prioritize Madison's social media career over my academic achievements, they were about to learn there were consequences for that choice. I had a valedictorian speech to give, and suddenly I knew exactly what I wanted to say. Professor Martinez was waiting for me near the faculty entrance, but he wasn't alone. Standing beside him was my grandmother Dorothy, using her walker, but beaming with pride. At 78 years old, she'd traveled 6 hours by bus from her small town to be here. "Ashford." Grandma Dorothy called out, her voice carrying across the crowd. "Come here, and let me look at my valedictorian grandson." I hurried over and carefully hugged her, mindful of her fragile frame. She smelled like the lavender soap she'd used for as long as I could remember, and her presence immediately made everything feel more manageable. "Grandma, you didn't have to come all this way," I said, though I was incredibly grateful she had. "Nonsense," she replied firmly. "Wild horses couldn't keep me away from this day. Where are your parents? I want to get a photo of all of us together." I exchanged glances with Professor Martinez, who seemed to understand the situation without explanation. "They couldn't make it, Grandma. Work obligations." Her expression shifted from confusion to something sharper. Work obligations on graduation day, for their valedictorian son. Before I could explain further, I heard someone calling my name from across the courtyard. Uncle Richard and Aunt Patricia were hurrying toward us, Richard carrying a professional camera, and Patricia holding a large bouquet of flowers. "We made it," Aunt Patricia said breathlessly as she reached us. "Richard drove through the night so we wouldn't miss your big day." Uncle Richard, my dad's younger brother, had always been the successful sibling. He owned a chain of automotive repair shops and lived 2 states away, but he'd somehow found time to attend my graduation when my own parents couldn't. "Where's Robert?" Uncle Richard asked, looking around for his brother. "I assumed he'd be here early, setting up chairs in the front row. The awkward silence that followed was broken by Professor Martinez. Ashford, before we get caught up in family logistics, I have some important news about your fellowship. He handed me an official-looking envelope. The selection committee met yesterday for final reviews. You've been chosen not just for the standard graduate fellowship, but for the Presidential Scholars Program. It includes full tuition, a research stipend, housing allowance, and guaranteed placement with one of our industry partners after graduation. I opened the envelope with shaking hands. The letter confirmed everything Professor Martinez had said, plus additional benefits I hadn't expected. The total value of the package was over $80,000. This is incredible, I said, reading through the details. Professor Martinez, I don't know how to thank you. You earned every bit of it, he replied. Your undergraduate research on sustainable materials has already attracted attention from 3 major engineering firms. They're competing to sponsor your graduate work. Grandma Dorothy was reading the letter over my shoulder, her eyes widening as she processed the significance. $80,000, Ashford. This is a full ride through graduate school with money left over. Uncle Richard whistled low. That's more than most people make in a year. Ashford, this is extraordinary. Aunt Patricia was already taking photos of me holding the letter. We have to document this moment. Your parents are going to be so proud when they see these pictures. I didn't have the heart to tell her that my parents were currently posting pictures of champagne toasts at a luxury spa instead of attending my graduation. Actually, Professor Martinez said carefully, there's something else we should discuss. I've been contacted by your parents several times over the years with questions about your academic performance. My stomach dropped. What kind of questions? They wanted to know if your achievements were really that impressive and whether you were overachieving to get attention. I found their calls unusual, so I documented our conversations. Uncle Richard's expression darkened. They questioned whether Ashford's academic success was legitimate. Multiple times, Professor Martinez confirmed. I assured them that Ashford was among the top 5 students I'd taught in 20 years of university teaching, but they seemed skeptical. They asked if I thought he was compensating for something with his academic focus. The betrayal hit a new level. Not only had my parents dismissed my achievements, but they'd actively questioned their validity behind my back. Grandma Dorothy's face was turning red with anger. Those fools! I helped pay for his final semester when they claimed financial hardship. I mortgaged my house because they said they couldn't contribute to his education costs. You mortgaged your house? I asked, horrified. $25,000, she said proudly. Best investment I've ever made. But I did it because your parents told me they were stretched thin financially and couldn't help with your final year expenses. Uncle Richard and Aunt Patricia exchanged meaningful looks. Robert called me last month asking to borrow money for a family emergency, Uncle Richard said slowly. I sent him $10,000. He said it was for medical bills. The scope of their deception was expanding beyond anything I'd imagined. They'd borrowed money from multiple family members while claiming poverty, then used those funds to finance Madison's luxury lifestyle. There's more, Aunt Patricia added quietly. Patricia's sister works at Serenity Springs Resort. She mentioned seeing your parents there this weekend with Madison. The bill for their spa package was over $20,000. Professor Martinez looked confused. Your parents are at a spa resort today, during your graduation ceremony. Before I could answer, my phone buzzed with a text from Taylor. I'm at the venue early, helping with setup. Your friend Sarah brought flowers for you, and Marcus found seats in the front row for your family. We've saved space for 6 people. How many are coming? I looked around at my actual support system. Grandma Dorothy, who'd mortgaged her house for my education. Uncle Richard, and Aunt Patricia, who'd driven through the night to be here. Professor Martinez, who'd mentored me for 3 years and fought for my fellowship recommendation. 5, I texted back. Save space for 5 people. Taylor responded immediately. What about your parents and Madison? I took a deep breath before responding. They couldn't make it. As we walked toward the ceremony venue, Grandma Dorothy took my arm for support, but also for a private conversation. "Ashford," she said quietly, "I want you to know that your achievements have never gone unnoticed. I've kept every newspaper clipping about your academic awards, every letter from the university about your honors, every photo from your research presentations." She pulled a small photo album from her purse and showed me pages of documentation I didn't know existed. Academic awards I'd forgotten about, scholarship notifications, even a newspaper article about my engineering research that I'd never seen. "Your parents may not understand your worth," she continued, "but there are people who do. Don't let their blindness diminish your light." As we entered the venue, and I saw the crowd of proud families, I realized something important. The people who truly mattered were here with me today. Their presence meant more than any absent parent's approval ever could. But I also realized that my parents' choice to prioritize Madison's spa day over my graduation wasn't just about today. It was about a pattern of behavior that had shaped my entire college experience. Tonight, during my valedictorian speech, I was going to address that pattern directly. They might not be here to hear it, but everyone else would be. The graduation venue was filled with 800 proud family members, but as I sat in the front row with my fellow graduates, I felt surprisingly calm. Grandma Dorothy, Uncle Richard, Aunt Patricia, Professor Martinez, and Taylor were seated directly behind me, creating a support network that felt more substantial than any single family unit ever could. My original speech was folded in my cap, but I'd been mentally revising it throughout the ceremony. Dean Williams had just finished announcing the academic awards, including my recognition for highest cumulative grade point average and outstanding research achievement. The applause from the audience was enthusiastic, and I could hear Grandma Dorothy cheering louder than everyone else combined. "Ladies and gentlemen," Dean Williams announced, "it is my honor to introduce our valedictorian, Ashford Mitchell Thompson, graduating summa cum laude, with dual degrees in mechanical engineering and business administration." I stood and walked to the podium, looking out at nearly 4,000 people gathered to celebrate academic achievement. Television cameras were recording the ceremony for families who couldn't attend, and I noticed several people holding phones to livestream the speeches. My original speech had been about gratitude to family and the importance of education in achieving dreams. Standard valedictorian material that would have satisfied everyone without challenging anyone. But as I stood at the microphone, I realized this was my opportunity to speak honestly about what academic achievement means when it happens in isolation from family support. Thank you, Dean Williams faculty members, proud families, and fellow graduates. I began my voice carrying clearly through the venue's sound system. 4 years ago, I walked onto this campus as an 18-year-old with more questions than answers about my future. I paused and scanned the audience, noting the attentive faces and recording devices pointed in my direction. I'd like to share something with you about what I've learned during my time here. Success in higher education requires more than intelligence or even hard work. It requires the ability to persist when support systems fail to celebrate achievements alone, and to find your own reason for pursuing excellence. A murmur went through the crowd. This wasn't typical graduation speech territory. Some of you are here today, surrounded by families who have supported every step of your educational journey. Parents who attended every school play, siblings who helped with homework, grandparents who called to check on your exam scores. You should feel grateful for that foundation. I looked directly at the section where my family sat, making eye contact with Grandma Dorothy, who nodded encouragingly. But some of you succeeded despite circumstances that made education a lonely pursuit. Maybe your parents worked multiple jobs and couldn't attend school events. Maybe your family didn't understand the value of higher education. Maybe the people closest to you questioned whether your academic focus was worth the sacrifice. The venue had grown completely quiet. Even the usual rustling of programs and shifting in seats had stopped. I want to speak directly to those students and to families who may not realize how their support or lack thereof affects the people they love. Academic achievement in isolation is possible, but it comes at an emotional cost that shapes character in profound ways. My heart was pounding, but my voice remained steady as I continued. I've learned to celebrate my successes alone. I've learned that validation from professors and mentors can substitute for family pride. I've learned that achievement without acknowledgement is still achievement, but it feels different when the people who raised you can't find time to witness what you've accomplished. I paused and pulled my phone from my pocket, glancing at the screen where Madison's Instagram story was still visible. Today, as we celebrate academic excellence, I want to acknowledge everyone who chose to be here. Every parent who took time off work, every grandparent who traveled despite mobility challenges, every sibling who gave up weekend plans to witness this ceremony. Your presence matters more than you know. The applause that followed was different from typical graduation politeness. It felt personal and emotional. But I also want to address those who chose not to be here today. To everyone who decided that other priorities were more important than witnessing academic achievement, who claimed exhaustion when energy was readily available for different activities, who questioned the value of educational success while celebrating far lesser accomplishments. Dean Williams shifted uncomfortably in his chair, clearly uncertain about where my speech was heading. To everyone who didn't show up today, who made excuses instead of appearances, who treated this milestone as optional, while treating social media content as essential, this one's for you. I looked directly into the main television camera and spoke with complete conviction. This achievement happened without your support, your presence, or your approval. That makes it entirely mine. Every late night studying, every sacrifice made for academic excellence, every moment of pride that went unwitnessed by the people who should have cared most about my success. The audience was completely silent, hanging on every word. I want other students to understand that family dysfunction doesn't have to limit academic potential. Sometimes the most meaningful achievements happen when we stop seeking approval from people who are incapable of providing it and start pursuing excellence for its own sake. I folded the paper containing my original speech and set it aside. In closing, I want to thank the people who did show up today and throughout my college career. Professor Martinez, who became a mentor when I needed guidance. My grandmother Dorothy, who mortgaged her house to help fund my education when others claimed financial hardship. My uncle and aunt, who drove through the night to be here. My girlfriend Taylor, and friends who celebrated every small victory along the way. I looked at each of them in turn, feeling genuine gratitude that overwhelmed any disappointment about absent family members. True success isn't measured by who applauds your achievements, but by your ability to pursue excellence, regardless of external validation. Today marks the end of my undergraduate career and the beginning of graduate studies that will be funded entirely by merit-based fellowships totaling over $80,000. The audience erupted in applause, many people rising to their feet. To my fellow graduates, surround yourself with people who celebrate your growth, not those who question your motivation for pursuing it. And remember that sometimes the most satisfying victories are the ones you achieve entirely on your own terms. As I concluded my speech and returned to my seat, the applause continued for nearly 2 full minutes. I could see people in the audience wiping away tears, and several graduates turned to give me thumbs up or nod their approval. But the most significant reaction came from the parking lot after the ceremony, where I would discover that my words had reached a much larger audience than just the people in the venue that day. 20 minutes after my speech concluded, as graduates were taking photos with their families, chaos erupted near the venue's entrance. I was posing for pictures with Grandma Dorothy when I heard raised voices coming from the parking lot. Ashford. Taylor came running toward me, her face flushed with excitement and something that looked like concern. "You need to see this. Your speech is already going viral on social media." She showed me her phone screen where my graduation address was being shared across multiple platforms. The video had been posted by the university's official account, but dozens of people were resharing it with comments about family dysfunction, academic achievement, and emotional abuse. It has over 50,000 views already, Taylor said breathlessly. People are sharing their own stories about unsupportive families in the comments. It's incredible. But before I could process the implications of my speech, reaching a wider audience, Uncle Richard appeared at my side, looking grim. Ashford, your parents just arrived. They're in the parking lot, and they look upset. Your mother is crying, and your father keeps checking his phone like he's seeing something he doesn't like. My stomach dropped. They'd heard my speech somehow, and now they were here to confront me about it. Where's Madison? I asked, suddenly concerned about my sister's involvement in this drama. That's the thing, Uncle Richard said carefully. She's with them, but she's not taking their side. She's actually arguing with them about something. It looks pretty heated. We walked toward the parking lot as a group, my support network flanking me like bodyguards preparing for battle. As we approached, I could hear my parents' voices before I could see them. This is humiliating, Robert, Mom was saying to Dad, her voice shaking with anger and embarrassment. Everyone at the spa saw that video. People were staring at us and whispering. The resort manager even asked if we wanted to cut our stay short. Dad was pacing between two cars, running his hands through his hair in frustration. How were we supposed to know he was going to embarrass us publicly? We thought we'd watch the ceremony later online. There is no online version, Madison said firmly, standing apart from both parents with her arms crossed. There never was. You lied about that too. I stopped walking when I heard her words. Madison knew they'd lied about the livestream option. Madison, stay out of this, Mom snapped. This situation is between us and your brother. No, it's not, Madison replied, her voice growing stronger. This situation is about you choosing my spa weekend over Ashford's graduation. It's about you spending $20,000 on my social media content while claiming you couldn't afford to attend his valedictorian ceremony. Professor Martinez, who was walking behind me, whispered quietly, "This is more confrontational than I expected. Are you prepared for this conversation?" Before I could answer, Dad spotted our group approaching. His expression shifted from frustration to something that looked like guilt mixed with defensive anger. Ashford. He called out, his voice carrying across the parking lot. We need to talk about that speech of yours. I continued walking until I was standing about 10 feet away from them, close enough to have a conversation, but far enough to maintain some emotional distance. What about it? I asked, surprised by how calm my own voice sounded. You embarrassed your family in front of thousands of people, Mom said, tears streaming down her face. How could you air our private business in a graduation speech? Grandma Dorothy stepped forward, using her walker, but moving with surprising determination. Linda, the only embarrassing thing about this situation is your absence from your son's graduation ceremony. Mother Dorothy, Dad started to say, but she cut him off with a sharp look. Don't Mother Dorothy me, Robert. I raised better men than this. Your son just graduated as valedictorian with the highest honors possible, and you chose a spa vacation over witnessing his achievement. You don't understand the full situation, Mom protested. We've been under enormous stress with work, and Madison needed this time for her mental health. Madison laughed bitterly. My mental health, Mom. I begged you to skip the spa weekend and come to Ashford's graduation instead. You told me his ceremony would be boring, and that celebrating my follower milestone was more important for our family's image. The admission hung in the air like a bomb that had just exploded. They hadn't even pretended to prioritize my graduation over Madison's social media career. They'd explicitly chosen her Instagram content over my academic achievement. That's not exactly what we said, Dad protested weakly. It's exactly what you said, Madison replied firmly. And I recorded part of the conversation because I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She pulled out her phone and played an audio clip that made my blood run cold. Mom's voice was clearly audible. Madison's influencer career is just taking off. This spa content will get her at least 5,000 new followers, which translates to real money through brand partnerships. Ashford's graduation is just one day, but Madison's social media presence could support our whole family financially. The recording continued with Dad's voice adding, "Besides, Ashford doesn't need the emotional support. He's always been independent. Madison needs us there for her confidence." Uncle Richard whistled low. "You recorded your own parents prioritizing social media content over your brother's graduation." Madison nodded, tears starting to form in her eyes. "I wanted proof of how wrong this was, but I never planned to use the recording. I thought maybe they'd realize their mistake and change their minds about coming today." I stared at my parents, trying to process the depth of their dismissal of my achievements. It wasn't just that they'd chosen Madison over me. They'd calculated the financial value of her social media content and determined that it outweighed the significance of my academic success. "So my graduation ceremony was worth less to you than Instagram followers?" I asked, my voice steady, despite the anger building inside me. "Ashford, you're twisting our words," Mom said desperately. "We love you, and we're proud of you. We just thought Madison needed our support more right now." Professor Martinez stepped forward. "If I may interrupt, I think there's something you should know about the impact of Ashford's speech today." He showed Dad his phone where my graduation address was being shared across social media platforms, with thousands of comments and reactions. "Your son's words about achieving success despite family indifference have resonated with people around the country. He's been contacted by 3 news outlets for interviews, and the university has received dozens of calls about his fellowship achievements." Dad's face went pale as he scrolled through the comments on the viral video. Many people were sharing their own stories of family members who'd missed important milestones, and several were specifically criticizing parents who prioritize social media over academic achievement. "This is a nightmare," Dad muttered. "Everyone's going to know our business now." "Everyone already knows," I said firmly, "because I decided that your behavior deserved to be called out publicly. You chose to prioritize Instagram content over my graduation. Now the whole world knows exactly what kind of parents you are." But as I spoke those words, I realized that my satisfaction with their public embarrassment was quickly giving way to something deeper and more complex. This confrontation wasn't going to fix our relationship or change their fundamental character. The real resolution would have to come through different means entirely. The parking lot confrontation was drawing a crowd. Other graduating families had stopped their celebrations to watch our drama unfold, some recognizing me from my viral speech, and others simply drawn to the obvious conflict happening near their cars. Dean Williams appeared beside Professor Martinez, looking concerned about the spectacle taking place on university property. "Perhaps we should move this conversation somewhere more private," he suggested diplomatically. Uncle Richard took charge of the situation. "My hotel has a conference room we can use. Everyone who's directly involved in this family situation should come with us now. This needs to be resolved properly." As we walked toward Uncle Richard's car, Madison fell into step beside me. "Ashford, I need you to know that I never wanted any of this," she said quietly. "I've felt guilty about the favoritism for years, but I didn't know how to address it without making everything worse." "Why didn't you ever say anything?" I asked, genuinely curious, rather than accusatory. "Because I was afraid they'd stop supporting me too, and then we'd both be on the outside," she admitted. "But after watching you succeed completely on your own, I realized that being supported for the wrong reasons is almost worse than not being supported at all." 20 minutes later, we were sitting around a conference table in Uncle Richard's hotel. The assembled group included my parents, Madison, Grandma Dorothy, Uncle Richard, Aunt Patricia, Professor Martinez, and myself. Taylor had offered to come, but I'd asked her to give us some family time to work through this. Professor Martinez had brought a folder containing documentation of my academic achievements and his recorded conversations with my parents. Uncle Richard had printed out screenshots of Madison's social media posts from the spa weekend, along with receipts showing the cost of their resort package. Before anyone says another word, Grandma Dorothy announced, "I want everyone to acknowledge the facts of this situation, without making excuses or justifications." She opened a small notebook and began reading. Fact 1. Ashford graduated today as valedictorian with the highest grade point average in his class, and dual degrees earned while working 3 part-time jobs. Fact 2. Ashford received a prestigious fellowship worth over $80,000 based on his undergraduate research and academic excellence. Fact 3. Ashford's parents chose to attend an expensive spa vacation instead of his graduation ceremony, claiming exhaustion and financial hardship. Fact 4. The spa vacation cost over $20,000 paid for, with borrowed money, while Ashford struggled to afford basic educational expenses. Fact 5. Ashford's parents have consistently prioritized Madison's social media career over his academic achievements, including questioning the legitimacy of his success to his professors. Mom started to protest, but Grandma Dorothy held up her hand. I'm not finished. Fact 6. This pattern of favoritism has been documented for 4 years, causing psychological harm to both children in different ways. Fact 7. Today's graduation speech was a natural response to years of dismissive treatment, not an unprovoked attack on family privacy. She closed the notebook and looked directly at my parents. Now, Robert and Linda, I want you to explain how any of these facts can be justified. The silence stretched uncomfortably long before Dad finally spoke. We never intended to hurt Ashford's feelings. We thought Madison needed more emotional support because she's always been more sensitive. Professor Martinez leaned forward. Mr. Thompson, in your conversations with me, you specifically questioned whether Ashford was overachieving to get attention. How is that consistent with providing emotional support? Dad's face reddened. I was just trying to understand if his academic focus was healthy. He seemed obsessed with grades and achievements. His academic focus earned him a full graduate fellowship and job placement with major engineering firms. Professor Martinez replied firmly. Most parents would consider that extraordinarily healthy. Uncle Richard spread out the financial documentation on the table. Let's talk about the money aspect of the situation. Dorothy mortgaged her house to help with Ashford's education costs because you claimed financial hardship. I loaned you $10,000 last month because you said you had a medical emergency. But you've spent over $20,000 on Madison's social media content in the past 6 months. He showed them receipts for previous spa days, professional photography sessions, and designer clothing purchases for Madison's Instagram account. You've been systematically lying to family members about your financial situation while funding Madison's influencer lifestyle and dismissing Ashford's educational needs. Mom started crying again. We thought Madison's social media career could help support the whole family eventually. We saw it as an investment. What about Ashford's engineering career? Aunt Patricia asked pointedly. Do you think that might be financially beneficial for your family? He's already been offered starting salaries higher than what most people make after working for 10 years. Madison had been quiet throughout this exchange, but finally she spoke up. I want everyone to stop talking about my social media career like it's some kind of family business plan, she said firmly. I never asked for this level of investment or attention. I wanted to develop my platform naturally, not with borrowed money and at the expense of my brother's achievements. She turned to face our parents directly. You've turned my Instagram account into a source of family drama and financial stress. I don't want that responsibility anymore. Madison, honey, Mom started to say, but Madison cut her off. I'm dropping out of community college and getting a full-time job. I'm going to pay back every penny you've spent on my social media career, starting with today's spa weekend. That's not necessary, Dad protested. We believe in your potential. What about Ashford's potential? Madison asked sharply. He's graduating as valedictorian, and you acted like it was a minor inconvenience to attend his ceremony. Professor Martinez pulled out another document from his folder. There's something else your family should know. Ashford's undergraduate research has been published in 2 academic journals, and he's been invited to present his findings at the National Engineering Conference next month. The conference organizers specifically requested him based on the significance of his work. 3 major companies have already expressed interest in funding his graduate research, with the possibility of hiring him full-time after he completes his master's degree. Uncle Richard looked impressed. What kind of starting salaries are we talking about? The preliminary offers range from $95,000 to $120,000 annually, plus benefits and research bonuses. Mom and Dad exchanged glances clearly, processing the financial implications of what they'd almost missed through their dismissive attitude toward my achievements. Ashford, Dad said slowly, we had no idea your academic work was attracting this level of professional attention. Because you never asked, I replied simply. You never attended my research presentations, never read the articles about my achievements, never engaged with the professors who could have explained the significance of what I was accomplishing. Instead, you questioned whether my achievements were legitimate and prioritized Instagram followers over academic excellence. Grandma Dorothy leaned forward in her chair. The question now is what you're going to do to repair the damage you've caused to both of your children. Because this conversation can go one of two ways. Either you acknowledge your mistakes and commit to changing your behavior, or you continue making excuses and lose both of your children permanently. The room fell silent as everyone waited for my parents' response to what amounted to an ultimatum from their own mother. What they said next would determine whether our family relationship could be salvaged, or whether this graduation day would mark the permanent end of their involvement in my life. The silence in the hotel conference room stretched for what felt like an eternity before my father finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. We've been terrible parents to you, Ashford. I don't know how else to say it. Mom was crying openly now, but for the first time her tears seemed to come from genuine remorse rather than self-pity. We got so caught up in Madison's immediate needs and visible struggles that we completely took your independence and success for granted, she said. We assumed you didn't need our support because you were doing so well on your own. Madison reached across the table and took my hand. But that's exactly when someone needs support the most. When they're succeeding despite difficult circumstances. Uncle Richard nodded approvingly. Recognition and celebration shouldn't be conditional on neediness. Achievement should be celebrated precisely because it represents overcoming challenges. Professor Martinez added, in my 20 years of teaching, I've seen many students struggle with family dynamics that undermine their academic confidence. Ashford succeeded, despite that challenge, not because of it. Dad looked directly at me for the first time since entering the conference room. I want to understand what we need to do to fix this. Not just apologize, but actually change our behavior moving forward. Grandma Dorothy opened her notebook again. I have some suggestions since you asked. First, you're going to family counseling. All four of you together, and individually. This pattern of favoritism has damaged both of your children, and it won't change without professional intervention. Second, you're going to attend every single one of Ashford's graduate school milestones. Research presentations, academic conferences, fellowship ceremonies, thesis, defense graduation, everything. Third, you're going to educate yourselves about his field of study so you can engage meaningfully with his work, instead of dismissing it as overachievement. Fourth, you're going to publicly acknowledge his accomplishments with the same enthusiasm you've shown for Madison's social media milestones. Mom wiped her eyes and nodded. We'll do all of that, whatever it takes. But I realized that my own healing didn't depend entirely on their transformation. My graduation speech had accomplished something more important than forcing a family confrontation. Actually, I said, there's something I need to tell all of you. My speech today wasn't just about calling out my parents' behavior. It was about declaring my independence from needing their approval to feel successful. I looked around the table at the people who had genuinely supported my journey. Grandma Dorothy, you mortgaged your house for my education. Uncle Richard and Aunt Patricia drove through the night to attend my graduation. Professor Martinez became a mentor when I needed guidance. Madison stood up for me, even when it was uncomfortable. Those actions showed me what genuine support looks like. They also showed me that family isn't just about blood relationships. It's about the people who choose to invest in your growth and celebrate your achievements. Taylor appeared in the conference room doorway, having been invited by Uncle Richard to join the conversation. "Ashford," she said excitedly, "you need to see what's happening online. Your speech has been viewed over 500,000 times. 3 news networks want to interview you about academic achievement and family dynamics." She showed me her phone screen where messages and interview requests were flooding my social media accounts. More importantly, the university has received over $50,000 in scholarship donations inspired by your speech. They're creating a fund for students from unsupportive family situations. Professor Martinez looked amazed. "Ashford, your words today have created a movement. Students around the country are sharing their own stories about achieving success without family support." Dad stared at the phone screen showing the viral video statistics. 500,000 people have seen your speech, and most of the comments are praising his courage for speaking honestly about family dysfunction, Taylor added. People are calling him an inspiration for students dealing with similar situations. Madison smiled for the first time all day. "You've turned our family drama into something that's helping other people. That's incredible." But the most significant development came from an unexpected source. Dean Williams appeared in the conference room doorway, looking slightly overwhelmed. "Ashford, I apologize for interrupting, but I have some news that can't wait. The National Education Foundation has contacted the university about your graduation speech." He handed me an official letter. "They want to offer you a position as a spokesperson for their academic achievement initiative. It includes a speaking fee of $5,000 per appearance, plus travel expenses. They've already booked you for 6 university commencements next month if you're interested." I read through the letter, hardly believing what I was seeing. My decision to speak honestly about family dysfunction had somehow opened doors I'd never imagined existed. "There's more," Dean Williams continued. "The engineering department has received calls from 4 additional companies interested in sponsoring your graduate research. The value of your fellowship package has increased to over $100,000 with these new corporate partnerships." Uncle Richard laughed and shook his head. "So, by missing your graduation to attend a spa weekend, your parents inadvertently helped you become a nationally recognized speaker on academic achievement." "The irony is incredible," Madison agreed. "Their absence created the motivation for a speech that's launched your public speaking career. But as I processed these opportunities, I realized that my parents' reaction to my success would be the real test of whether our relationship could be repaired." Mom was the first to speak. "Ashford, we're incredibly proud of what you've accomplished today. Not just the graduation and fellowship, but your courage in speaking honestly about our failures as parents. You've turned our mistakes into something that's helping other students, and that shows a maturity we clearly haven't demonstrated." Dad nodded in agreement. "We want to support your speaking career and your graduate studies. We want to be the parents you deserve to have from the beginning. But we also understand that rebuilding trust will take time, and that our support needs to be consistent rather than conditional." Professor Martinez smiled. "I think this conversation represents a genuine turning point for your family." Grandma Dorothy closed her notebook with satisfaction. "Sometimes it takes a public wake-up call for people to recognize their blind spots." As we prepared to leave the conference room, Madison pulled me aside for a private conversation. "Ashford, I want you to know that I'm proud to be your sister. Not because of what you've achieved, but because of how you've handled success with dignity and used your platform to help others. I'm going to restructure my social media presence to focus on promoting educational achievement instead of lifestyle content. I want to use my followers to support students like you instead of just selling products." 6 months later, our family dynamics had transformed in ways I couldn't have imagined on graduation day. My parents attended every single one of my graduate school presentations, often bringing flowers and staying afterward to ask detailed questions about my research. Madison followed through on her promise to redirect her social media platform. She now creates content about study strategies, academic achievements, and supporting family members through educational challenges. Her follower count has actually grown since she shifted focus away from lifestyle content. The National Education Foundation speaking engagements led to additional opportunities. I've spoken at over 30 universities about academic perseverance, family dynamics, and the importance of pursuing excellence regardless of external validation. The scholarship fund inspired by my graduation speech has distributed over $300,000 to students from unsupportive family situations. Several recipients have reached out personally to share how the financial assistance changed their educational trajectories. Most importantly, I learned that sometimes the most transformative moments come from speaking truth in situations where silence would be easier. My parents' absence from graduation felt like abandonment in the moment, but it created the circumstances for a breakthrough that benefited not just our family, but thousands of students dealing with similar challenges. The fellowship program exceeded all expectations. My graduate research on sustainable building materials has attracted international attention, and I've accepted a position with a major engineering firm that will allow me to continue my studies while gaining professional experience. But perhaps the most satisfying outcome is the relationship I now have with my parents. Their support feels genuine because it's based on understanding my achievements rather than dismissing them. They've learned to ask meaningful questions about my work and celebrate milestones that matter to me rather than the ones that matter to them. The lesson I've carried forward from graduation day is this: your worth isn't determined by who recognizes your achievements, but by your willingness to pursue excellence, regardless of external validation. Sometimes the people who should support you most will fail you completely, but that failure can become the foundation for even greater success if you choose to use it as motivation rather than excuse. True family support isn't about blood relationships or unconditional approval. It's about surrounding yourself with people who celebrate your growth, challenge you to improve, and stand beside you during both triumphs and setbacks. My graduation day began with disappointment and betrayal, but it ended with the discovery that the most meaningful victories are often the ones you achieve entirely on your own terms, surrounded by people who choose to be part of your journey, rather than those who are obligated to care about your destination. Have you ever had to choose between seeking approval from people who consistently disappoint you and pursuing your goals independently? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please give it a like and subscribe to hear more about overcoming family challenges while pursuing academic and professional success. Share this video with anyone who might benefit from hearing that their worth isn't determined by other people's ability to recognize it. Thank you for listening to my story, and I hope it encourages you to pursue your own excellence, regardless of who's cheering from the sidelines. Remember that sometimes the most satisfying achievements are the ones that happen despite obstacles, rather than because of advantages, and that the people who truly matter will find their way to your side when it counts most.